Atta, for the sound of the bell. Mind calm, body at ease, breathing quiet, sentiment benevolent. Dharma friends, sitting still in vital silence, wanting nothing, we practice eco-Buddhism together. The sound of the temple bell booms for all to cease from conflict. May the way of Buddha usher in the dawn of non-violent global village forever. Here is the after sound of the bell. Thunder of silence, light after Dharma rain. Om Amoka Vairocana Maha Mudra Mani Padma Chavala Pravartaya
Please join in these simple stretching exercises mindfully. Breathing during the process of each of the mindfulness practices. Then when the body is open, breathing in. And out. Inhaling, breathing in. Exhaling as the body folds and closes. Please stand and face your altar for the chanting of the three recitation of the three refuges, as well as their recitation in English. And if you do not have an altar, perhaps just turn to a window and focus on the natural setting, if there's one outside. Fully present, this is what we've got each moment. Chi sim quim yang ne shi bang san se che mong cha le song ju il che putaya apajunga chi sim quim yang ne shi bang sam se che mong cha le sam ju il che Dhammaya apajunga chi sim quim yang ne shi bang san se che mong cha le song ju il che song gaya She, we did three, I think. Yeah. So now in English, I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Buddha
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment
and realize the great way.
And realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
And resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will penetrate the teachings
I will penetrate the teachings
and uncover oceans of wisdom.
and uncover oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha
I go for refuge to the Sangha
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will seek peace and happiness for the many
I will seek peace and happiness for the many
and transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
and transform this world into Buddha lands unimpeded.
Please be seated in a moment for another period of meditation. It's going to be a guided one for those of you who resonate with a guided meditation, one that was written by our Earth and Mind member, Omyo, for the occasion of Earth Day. If you wish to have a silent meditation, you can just silence something on your computer so that then you can sit silently. I think we'll be about 10 minutes altogether. Okay, please be seated. Or Omyo asks you to go to a place where you can be seeing of nature. It could be a window if your computer allows, even stepping outside. So that is part of the Earth Day practice, is to be in touch with nature during this time. Okay, so please go to your places. Earth Day meditation from Omyo. She guides. As you listen to this, please move to a window or doorway so you can see outside if possible, or even step outdoors if your connection will allow you. If you do not have access to a view of the outdoors, you can engage in this meditation effectively through visualization in your mind's eye. We share an incredible amount of DNA with other living beings, including grass, trees, insects, and mammals. In our bodies right now are minerals, constituent elements of the earth. Also in our bodies is water. It is safe to say, from a quite literal standpoint, that when we look across a landscape, whether it be a mountain range, wetland, or our own backyard, there's no part of it that is foreign to us. We are made up of the things that we see in nature, and they are made up of us. From your vantage point, whether seated or standing, take a moment to steady yourself and come into your dignity as a living being. Take a few slow, deep breaths, allowing unnecessarily tightened muscles to relax. Breathing, allowing yourself to feel your whole body from toe to head and all that it contains. Embrace any discomfort or pain. So breathing with the body scan. Relax, relax, relax. If you are able to look outside, allow your eyes to fall upon something in your visual field. Perhaps a favorite tree or a blue jay at a feeder or a moss-covered stone. If you are not able to look outside, allow an image of nature to come into your mind. Perhaps a running stream or a bull moose. Whether inside or outside, gaze at this part of nature you have chosen. This being is your kin, and you are their kin. Now, ask the question, what gift does this being help me to recognize in myself? Don't get too intellectual about it. Just let whatever comes to mind arise. The gift could be physical and evolutionary, such as seeing the grasping agility of my hands in a squirrel digging up a nut. It could also be emotional or psychological, such as the patience of a tree or the vigilance of a mother goose. Take a moment to appreciate this gift in the being you are gazing at and in yourself. Feel the wonder and curiosity viscerally in your body. Marvel at seeing this wonderful gift in another being, and notice that the only reason you can appreciate this gift is because you too possess it. It's been said that when we point a finger at someone else, 3 fingers are pointing back at us. But that doesn't only apply to problems. Omyo says, when I watch my cat's laser focus on a bird outside the window, it's easy to forget that I am watching him as intently as he watches the bird. If I had no grace within myself, I could not recognize or appreciate the graceful bend of the canes of the raspberry bush. As spring continues to unfold, please take this exercise with you on walks and drives. Take it with you when you're watching a nature documentary or gardening. We are not using nature to give ourselves an ego boost. Rather, we are coming to understand that the practice of loving nature is the practice of loving ourselves. And the practice of loving ourselves is the practice of loving nature. Every single one of us is going through a challenge right now, although each challenge looks different for each of us. May the unfolding of this spring continually remind us of the beauty and resilience within ourselves and our non-human kin. If you've been outside or at a window or doorway, please come back to your altar or the place where we're doing your meditation. Sitting ready to hear the reading from the Dhammapada for this week. Ma'um is here with it, and it's still the pages from the chapter called Flowers. Please bring your hands together in Hapchang as you listen to these verses, continuing to breathe and be aware of body, mind.
The perfume of sandalwood, rose bay, or jasmine cannot travel against the wind, but the fragrance of virtue travels even against the wind, as far as the ends of the world. How much finer is the fragrance of virtue than of sandalwood, rose bay, of the blue lotus or jasmine? The fragrance of sandalwood and rose bay does not travel far, but the fragrance of virtue rises to the heavens.
Making bow. In bloom, purple periwinkles, yellow forsythia, and dandelions on the sunny side. 2 ducks are mating in our pond. Squirrels, squirrels, and more squirrels. Ah, the generous causes and conditions of springtime. Just this, just here, just now. Pay attention. Let's wake up. Well, good morning, dear precious friends, members in the 10 directions. May this find you well and safe with some wonderful routines and practice as an integral part of your days. So the reading that Ma'um did for us this morning reminds us of the fragrance of virtue, which is the second paramita, Shila paramita. May I be pure and virtuous. And today let's look first in this moon journeying through clouds for the Bodhisattva Precepts. They're on page 8 if you have your book. Now I'm going to read them aloud with a little bit of interpretation so that we can remember all the aspects of fragrance of virtue. So please compose yourself. Bring your hands palm to palm, or if you have the book, you can hold it in your hands. Ten Bodhisattva Precepts, Brahma's Net Sutra. 1. Do not harm, but cherish all life. By cultivating the seed of this, by cultivating the spirit of this precept, you cultivate compassion and are therefore able to go forward on the Bodhisattva path. 2, not to take what is not given, but to respect the things of others. By tending to this precept, you cultivate your seed of virtue in order to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. 3, do not engage in sexual misconduct, but practice purity of mind and self-restraint. By tending to this precept, you cultivate your seed of purity and able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. Four, do not lie, but speak the truth. By tending to this precept, you cultivate your seed of truth to go forward on the Bodhisattva path. 5, do not involve yourself in the trade of liquors and drugs which confuse or weaken the mind, but keep your mind calm and clear. By tending to this precept, you nurture your seed of wisdom in order to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. 6, do not speak of the misdeeds of others, but try to understand them with sympathy. By tending to this precept, you nurture your seed of friendship in order to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. Seven, do not praise yourself nor condemn others. By tending to this precept, you nurture your seed of respect and are able to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. And 8, do not withhold your aid, material or spiritual, but give freely of yours wherever there is need. If you tend to this precept, you will cultivate your seed of wealth and generosity in order to go forth on the Bodhisattva path. Please sit comfortably if you need to. If you need to move, at the temple this Sunday in April, the closest to Earth Day, is usually when our Earth and Mind folks take over the service and conduct the whole thing. Often we've gone outside to do some special activities in the garden. We've often written intentions that we have for our Mother Earth. It's been quite wonderful. And one way for the group to participate today was for Omyo to write the meditation, which we did just a few minutes ago. So thanks, Omyo, and thanks, Earth and Mind folks, for some of the things which you've sent to help with this service. Of course, thank you for your presence among us all year. As many of you know, because I talk about this sometimes, it's always a mystery to me exactly what's going to come out of my mouth as the service on Sunday comes near. Sometimes I just give it up the night before and say, okay, please, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas out there, may it unfold. Let me see what it will be. And that happened today. What influenced me so much was our breakfast discussion. I think that you may know that with each breakfast, when it's almost done, one of our members brings up a topic, a Dharma topic, a weather topic, some topic. And we've had some really wonderful, thoughtful, fascinating, wise, and crazy even discussions. And this morning, the question that was asked was, what does this Earth Day mean to you? And there were 4 of us, because we're divided here with 3 of our residents next door at the temple and 4 here at the Sangha house. And it was interesting to hear everyone's perspective. And it, as always, helped me to clarify my own. Maybe that happens to you when you get in discussion and you hear this and you hear that, then you see what it is that comes up in your heart and mind to share. And that's the way it was for us. So what came up for me this morning was made me kind of throw out most of the things that I had planned yesterday to be a part of this service and my talk. So I'd like to then start with a poem that I received from another Buddhist teacher and friend, Osho Port, and a little bit of a comment from that poem from Dosho. This is the poem by Wendell Berry, and it's called The Real Work. And I feel like, well, you'll see. I think it applies to us right now. We're in the midst of real work. The real work. It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. Wendell Berry. Let me repeat it to you. The real work. It may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. For me, it's quite descriptive of these times. And this real work seems to be coming up every day, in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening. And sometimes even the night when I wake up and wonder, what is this? In our tradition, we've asked to generate great questioning or wonderment or great doubt, it's called. And I think this is what Wendell Berry is talking about, and that he calls it this bafflement in our situation with the pandemic. It's hard to go about business as usual, and so we have to figure out what to do moment to moment. That's our real work. And I like what Dosho said, and I'm going to read it to you. My first real baffling encounter with great uncertainty, also known as great doubt, great wonderment, came near the beginning of my Zen practice, probably in about 78 or 79. I was walking home from a long retreat with another student, and I asked him, "How'd your retreat go?" He looked at me with that kind of rawness that takes a 7-day retreat to reveal and said, "I don't know shit. I really don't know shit. I don't know shit." I kind of laughed. I like it when things are kind of so direct like that. So here we are in kind of a similar position, and our work is in front of us, and it's not what we're really used to. Eh? Yeah. Some of us have our children with us more than we ever thought. And that's really a handful, also trying to do your work and to manage a household and to work with your own mind. Some of us are working at home with no children. And there's lots of things that we're doing, but mainly it's way different from what we're used to, and our habitual patterns come to our face. And I think one of the habitual patterns that's so much affecting everything is our habitual pattern of consumption. It really goes back to the first noble truth, the second noble truth, the third noble truth, and the fourth. The first one is there is suffering, and its cause is desire, craving, consumption. Consumption has been mostly taken away from us. I know a lot of people are consuming a lot of media. I think I do a little more of that than I used to. But consumption, and in Buddhism we say that really the third noble truth, first is there's suffering, it's caused by consumption, and the third is nirvana, which is not feeding consumption. It's been said that the third noble truth is like a flame which is reaching out to actually be a flame and to burn. But if the oxygen in the air is withheld, that it's consuming, then the flame goes out, and that is said to be nirvana. And the way to nirvana is through practice of the Eightfold Path. Yeah. And all of this is to result in a change, a complete change of our heart-mind. In Buddhism, heart and mind go together. And this is pretty hard because we have been so conditioned. And we have to be extremely willing to let all of our habitual patterns be changed at this very basic level. So that consumption is not a central part of our life, hardly at all. Look at all the places in the world these days where there's been clean air and clean water when all the consumption has stopped. It's interesting. So a lot of people have to stop, but we've only got ourselves, and if we live in communities, that's wonderful and helpful because we can inspire each other to stop. And the Buddha always said that we have this wonderful gift of a human birth, that it's rare. You know the story of the blind turtle swimming in the ocean looking for a place to rest. It's hard because blind, swimming, tried to find a log with a hole in it to get up and to rest. So we are like that, and we have to somehow stop. And if we do have this gift of a human birth, which is said to be so rare, then what are we going to do with it? Yeah. It's interesting, what is it that changes our hearts and minds? Well, I think seeing things clearly, and our meditation practice, our chanting, prostrations, study are all about that. in Zen, we get a little radical and say it's about first-hand experience. It's about when our body just gets into the moment rather than the mind that crunches away. Yeah. So let's see. That sort of is what all came up as a result of the discussion at breakfast this morning. And before that, I had wanted to share some stories, and really they're kind of inspiring ones, and I'm going to give them more in a nutshell now rather than reading the whole story. Because if we're going to use this human life that is so fortunate to have, then it's often inspiring to hear stories of others and what they're doing, you know. And as we, as the chief consumers on the planet, you know, learn to transform that, then Earth Day would not be in vain. So it's a heart and mind transformation as much as anything else, or more than anything else. So one of the stories that I used to always tell at Peace Camp, it's a beautiful story that I found in this book, Sharing Nature with Children. It was a different version many years ago, and it's by Joseph Cornell, who's a kind of a nature awareness educator. And he had this story by Jean Guyon, who's a famous French writer, in the back of the book. It's not in this edition, I noticed, but I found it online. And I'd like to tell you his inspiring story. I'll try to tell it just in a nutshell. I want to try to end so Maun can make some announcements, and you can find out what's next with our temple offerings. There's quite a few things coming up. Okay, so the story, let me find it. I'm going to read some of it and tell some of it. I think I used to just tell it at camp because I had it really in my bones, but it got somehow a little out of my bones in the last few years. Jean Guyon puts himself in the position of the storyteller who meets this inspiring man. I was crossing the area, he says, at its widest point, and after 3 days walking, found myself in the midst of unparalleled desolation. I camped near the vestiges of an abandoned village. I'd run out of water the day before and had to find some. These clustered houses, although in ruins like an old wasp nest, suggested that there must once have been a spring or well here. There was indeed a spring, but it was dry. The 5 or 6 houses, roofless, gnawed by wind and rain, the tiny chapel with its crumbling steeple stood about like the houses and chapels in living villages, but all life had vanished. After 5 hours, he decided that he had to move from there. After 5 hours walking, I had still not found water, and there was nothing to give me any hope of finding any. All about me was the same dryness, the same coarse grasses. I thought I glimpsed in the distance a small black silhouette, upright, and took it for the trunk of a solitary tree. In any case, I started toward it. It was a shepherd. 30 sheep were lying about him on the baking earth. He gave me a drink from his water gourd, and a little later took me to his cottage in a fold of the plain. He drew his water, excellent water, from a very deep natural well above which he had constructed a primitive winch.
The man spoke little. This is a way of those who live alone. But one felt that he was sure of himself and confident in his assurance. That was unexpected in this barren country. He lived not in a cabin, but in a real house built of stone that bore plain evidence of how his own efforts had reclaimed the ruin he had found there on his arrival. His roof was strong and sound. The wind on its tiles made the sound of the sea upon its shore. He shared his soup with me. Oh, the place was in order. The dishes washed, the floor swept, his rifle oiled. His soup was boiling over the fire. I noticed then that he was cleanly shaved, that all his buttons were firmly sewed on, that his clothing had been mended with the meticulous care that makes the mending invisible. He shared his soup with me, and afterwards, when I offered my tobacco pouch, he told me that he did not smoke. His dog, as silent as himself, was friendly without being servile. And it unfolded into the evening. The shepherd went to fetch a small sack and poured out a heap of acorns on the table. He began to inspect them one by one with great concentration, separating the good from the bad. I smoked my pipe. I did offer to help him. He told me it was his job. And in fact, seeing the care he devoted to the task, I did not insist. That was the whole of our conversation. When he set aside a large enough pile of good acorns, he counted them out by tens, meanwhile eliminating the small ones or those which were slightly cracked. For now he examined them more closely. When he had thus selected 100 perfect acorns, he stopped and we went to bed. There was peace in being with this man. The next day I asked if I might rest here for a day. He found it quite natural, or to be more exact, he gave me the impression that nothing could startle him. My rest was not absolutely necessary, but I was interested and wished to know more about him. He opened the pen and led his flock to pasture. Before leaving, he plunged his sack of carefully selected and counted acorns into a pail of water. I noticed that he carried for a stick an iron rod as thick as my thumb and about 1.5 yards long. I'm remembering when telling this at camp. Resting myself by walking, I followed a path parallel to his. His pasture was in a valley. He left the dog in charge of the little flock and climbed towards where I stood. I was afraid that he was about to rebuke me for my indiscretion, but it was not that at all. This was the way he was going, and he invited me to go along if I had nothing better to do. He climbed to the top of the ridge about 100 yards away. Then he began thrusting his iron rod into the earth, making a hole in which he planted an acorn. Then he refilled the hole. He was planting oak trees. I asked him if the land belonged to him. He answered no. Did he know whose it was? He did not. He supposed it was community property, or perhaps belonged to people who cared nothing about it. He was not interested in finding out whose it was. He planted his 100 acorns with the greatest care. After the midday meal, he resumed his planting. I suppose I must have been fairly insistent in my questioning, for he answered me. For 3 years, he had been planting trees in the wilderness. He had planted 100,000. Of the 100,000, 20,000 had sprouted. Of the 20,000, he still expected to lose about half to rodents or to the unpredictable designs of providence. There remained 10,000 oak trees to grow where nothing had grown before. That was when I began to wonder about the age of this man. He was obviously over 50. 55, he told me. His name was Elziard Bouffier. He had once had a farm in the lowlands. There, he had had his life. He'd lost his only son, then his wife. He had withdrawn into this solitude where his pleasure was to live leisurely with his lambs and his dogs. It was his opinion that this land was dying for want of trees. He added that, having no very pressing business of his own, he had resolved to remedy the state of affairs. And so he did over many years until he died and created great, beautiful forests where none had been. Every day, carefully counting out acorns for the oak trees. And then he did plant birches and other trees in the valleys. And people began to notice all of this change, thinking it was just some magic of nature. But Elzéard Bogard usually kept himself at a distance with his work, so nobody really realized, except the author, that he was doing all this because the author had met him. And the author traced his life to having rejuvenated a whole area, and that at the end of his life, people lived throughout the area where this new forest had grown. 10,000 people. There had only been just very few when he came at first. And he was just very satisfied with this transformation. And government officials finally heard about it, and they appreciated it so much that they gave 3 forest wardens to protect him and the area through the last days of his life. I think it's a beautiful story because, well, I love telling it and using the iron rod and planting the acorns and just kind of embodying myself some of the things that Elzéard Bouvier did on that land. Because the story is about how one person, by just simple dedication, whether it be he was by himself, but there are other stories of people in groups who also have chosen beautiful projects that they've dedicated their lives to. So on this Earth Day, with this, and Earth Day is actually on Wednesday, and in the next 3 days, and we'll send this link to you one way or another, there are lots of Earth Day activities being offered 24/7 through till Wednesday. Thanks to Chicago member Sanchal, who sent us this link. And so maybe listen to these, and I think you may be already inspired, but get further inspired and maybe choose your own version of the Frenchman's work in planting trees. There's lots, picking up litter, caring for a garden, studying. We're going to try to raise chickens here. We're starting a new garden. Doing things for other people. I do not have a whole list in my mind right now, but I hope that the example of the story encourages you to pick something. We have been given our precious lives. What are we going to do with them? What is the real work? It may be that we no longer know what to do. Then we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, then we have come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. So, my friends, How will you sing? How will you sing? And as the Buddha said, and it's the focal point of a Buddha's birthday celebration, be ye a lamp. So how will you shine? I think most of you are all pretty shiny and wonderful already. It's now to take the step to embody love and service on behalf of the earth. So let's do two things as the service ends. One is to repeat the 4 great vows and then to get up, because lo and behold, it's Tongsang Sunim Memorial Day today. He's another one of the teachers in our tradition. And actually, he was known most for holding and keeping the precepts. So he was fragrant with the precepts. So please repeat after me the 4 great vows, and then let's all get up to do 3 prostrations in appreciation of Tongsang Sunim. All beings, one body.
All beings, one body.
I vow to liberate.
I vow to liberate.
Blind passions, one root.
Blind passions, one root.
I vow to terminate.
I vow to terminate.
Dharma gates, one mind.
Dharma gates, one mind.
I vow to penetrate.
I vow to penetrate.
The great way of Buddha.
The great way of Buddha.
I vow to realize.
I vow to realize.
Please stand. So Tongsang's picture is on the altar. And as we make our prostrations with each one, we just say Tongsang Sunim. So you will see my back. Maybe you can see his picture on the altar. See if I can lift it up just a little higher. All right. Tongsang Sunim. Tongsang Sunim. Tongsang Sunim. Tongsang Sunim. And then they bow to each other. We always look forward to hearing from you, and thank you for some of the many gifts which you've been sending, including masks, including food, including cards and writing. Thank you. And may you all be well and safe.
So good morning. Thanks to Haji Sunim for a wonderful service today. Very inspiring. While I make these announcements, I'm going to hold the sign that has the address of our Facebook page. So for the meetings that I am going to talk about You can find the links on this Facebook page. I did receive a notice during the service that for this meeting today, there was an extra HTTP in front of the link. And so it did not work for at least one person. If you encounter any challenges with finding our meetings, please check the email address. So today, immediately after service, there is a virtual tea time hosted by Kusa and by Tongsan. That will go on until noon, when the Recovery Dharma meeting will begin. And this afternoon, there will be meetings for special groups who've already signed up. There's a Precepts meeting and also a self-compassion meeting. So we look forward to your participation in these events. Please look at your email this week and also at our Facebook page as we obtain information about Earth Day events. Those are going to be posted and passed on to you, and we look forward to your participation. Finally, mark your calendars. Buddha's birthday is coming on May 2nd. At 8 p.m. will be the Burning Karma Cabaret, hosted by our Chicago temple. We're collaborating with Chicago this year on Buddha's birthday events. And then on Sunday, May 3rd, we will have a 10 a.m. Bathing of the Baby Buddha service here in Ann Arbor, and also an 8 p.m. lantern lighting service hosted by the folks in Chicago. So we look forward to your being present with us for those events. I believe that is the gist of the announcements today. Thank you for being with us. Look forward to seeing you in the future online, and also hopefully in person one of these days. Please enjoy your Earth Day.